Hey YouTube, let's set up my February 2025 bullet journal spreads. January has been a pretty slow month for me, so it was actually kind of difficult to keep up with journaling every day. But what I love about bullet journaling is that I can create custom spreads that are tailored specifically to my schedule at any given point in time. For February, the theme that I decided to go with is a dolphin, seashell, under the sea type of theme, which is inspired by bullet journal spreads that I remember seeing on Instagram in around 2021 or 2022. My favorite part about designing my bullet journal spreads is that I can experiment with different animals and develop my own style. The design of these dolphins is pretty chubby and probably out of proportion, but I think it all ties together with the other themed doodles in the spread. This month I decided to go back to a more freehand minimalist theme, like in my 2025 yearly setup, mostly because it took a lot of time and effort to take out my ruler and make perfectly straight lines like I tried to do in January. With how complicated some of the doodles got in this theme, I wanted to make sure I wasn't overcommitting myself to making journal spreads that would be difficult to maintain if my month was to get a bit busier. For the same reason, I also went with a bouncy calligraphy font for the month. Calligraphy is a nice way to add a little flourish to my spreads, whilst also keeping effort at a minimum, since it's essentially just handwriting with a fancy pen. As always, I like to include a monthly calendar at the beginning of each monthly spread, so I can document appointments, social commitments, and any other important deadlines. This is probably one of my most referenced pages throughout a month, as I often find I will easily forget any plans that I've made if I'm not being constantly reminded. The boxes in this monthly calendar ended up being slightly bigger than in my January calendar, so I have more room to write. I also free-handed the boxes as I wanted it to kind of look like pebbles in a rock pool. I coloured every alternative square in a light pink shade to give the spread a bit more colour because it was looking pretty plain with just black and white. I also added a grey drop shadow to each box to give the calendar more dimension overall. The next page in my monthly setup is my habit tracker. Due to the fact that my habit tracker wheel has 32 sections and February only has 28 days, I was able to draw a dolphin kind of diving into the wheel. I was sort of experimenting with the dolphins in these pages, and in the end, I think it just looks like I drew this dolphin at a weird angle, which I kind of did. For the habit wheel itself, these circular guides I made and store in the back pocket of my journal have saved me so much time and neatened the look of the spread overall. Something I noticed when filling out my habits in January was that it was pretty difficult to tell whether I had coloured in a section when I used super light markers to track the habit. So this month I went over the light shades twice so that it stood out better against the white page. Now onto my favourite page of my monthly setups, my mood tracker. Last month my theme was capybaras, so I sketched out 31 capybaras onto the page to represent the different days. And I had a legend with various moods that I would colour in as I reflect on each day. You can see this January mood tracker in my January plan with me, which is on my YouTube page. I think my doodles this month must have been quite a bit bigger than the capybaras last month, since these dolphins and other ocean-related drawings look quite cramped and close together, even though I only had to draw enough for 28 days. Still, I really love how the outlines turned out, and I cannot wait to see how this page looks at the end of the month. I also switched up my legend from last month to a scale, since I realized that I found it easier to rank my day rather than pick a specific mood for the whole day, because my mood could be drastically different from when I started in the morning to when I fill out my journal in the evenings. Another of my most used spreads last month were these work and to-do list trackers. Simply brain dumping all my tasks onto one page was actually pretty helpful for me to know what I still need to do, as well as what I want to do, and how to prioritize all those tasks. Something I did change up from January though, is that I divided the tracker into 2 columns instead of 3. I found that I didn't really have enough tasks to fill up all 3 columns last month, and I also need more space when writing out my tasks, and there just wasn't enough with the narrower columns I had. I definitely recommend this spread for anyone who likes to write out lists for everything, from the super important tasks to just anything that comes to mind. The next page is for my monthly transactions. Forcing myself to write out every time I spent money on something that I didn't necessarily need was a game changer for my spending habits. It sort of became like a game for me to try and use up the least number of lines on this page, since I'm not including all the necessary expenses I have to make, like public transport, bills, and monthly payments, which I already keep track of in my yearly setup. This spread has helped me be more mindful of whether I actually need something, as opposed to simply wanting it. You can see as I'm highlighting every other row in the same light pink shade that I mess up and accidentally color in a whole block of lines, but I decided to leave it as it is, as it adds to the slightly imperfect hand-drawn feel of my monthly pages. Finally, I'm bringing back my marker swatch from January, which was a super helpful reference when filling out my trackers and creating my weekly spreads. This time though, I made sure that the labels were a lot clearer than last month, and that I could see a visual difference between the various shades I used, since in January I still got a little confused with my markers because they all looked pretty similar on the page. Since I exclusively used Tombows to colour in the doodles this month, it made my marker tracking and storage on my desk a lot more straightforward. And here is a look at all my bullet journal spreads for February. This theme turned out so pretty with all the colours and the chubby dolphins. Feel free to comment some suggestions for my March theme, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!